It's a great pleasure to introduce somebody who needs no introduction, Bernie Begley. Bernie's a retired, very senior bank officer of Queen Edward. When I say retired, very young retired. From that, he's past president of the Queensland branch of the Australian Numismatic Society, where he was president for 12 years. He's a consultant to many of us and has mentored many of us over the years, and is a consultant to other bodies as well, including on numismatics to the Royal Historical Society of Queensland. He's been a federal councillor on our Australian Numismatic Society forever. And his great passion is collecting silver. But as we said yesterday, Bernie's also a consultant on fobs and minerals as well. So Bernie, we're looking forward so much to your presentation on nursing.
Oh, don't fob us off on Bernie.
Thank you, John. And after that introduction, I feel that I should demonstrate my superlative abilities by walking on water. I didn't recognise the character at all. Anyway, my paper today is called An Introduction to Nursing and Numismatics. Perhaps the nurse best known to the public was Florence Nightingale, whose influence modernised the calling of nursing and raised its social status greatly. In December 1867, 5 graduates of the Nightingale Training School, which was established in 1860, attached to St Thomas's Hospital, London, left for Sydney. This was fortunate for Prince Alfred, because after he was wounded in an assassination attempt at Clontarf, Sydney, on the 12th of March 1868, he was cared for by 2 of these nurses, who had arrived in Sydney only 1 week beforehand. He therefore had the benefit of the latest nursing care, despite being far removed from London, probably as far removed from London as you could be. From the late 1800s, nurses worldwide grew rapidly, and in Australia, like elsewhere, these nurses proudly wore the badges of their qualification on their uniforms daily, which explains why so many badges are today found chipped or damaged. They were utilitarian things. The Australasian Trained Nurses Association, established in 1899, issued this 30mm silver badge, and the nurse's name and date of award was engraved on the reverse. See? I'll come back to, there. There's the name and date of award on the grey, and mark at the bottom, Flavel's sterling silver. So now where was it? These are found in blue for enamel for general nursing and red for obstetric section, which was the previous slide. It clearly spells out obstetric on the red one. An example dated 1900, could you take it on a couple? There we are. Was made by A.W. Hare of Hunter Street, Sydney, with later examples usually marked for Flavel's, as we saw. And you'll notice this one here has got a registered design. That's an Australian registered design number. The maker's name, A.W. Hare, and these are pseudo hallmarks, imitating the anchor of Birmingham, which should be up and down, probably the Star and Southern Cross, and a lion passant. Somewhat remarkably, these are being made in 1900, whereas for the majority of badges made in Australia, there are no examples in general circulation before 1905, to my knowledge. So these are made as a jeweller's item rather than a badge maker's item. So later examples are usually marked for Flavel's, which would be Flavel's Sydney. Later examples have a brooch pin, which you saw on the previous one, as opposed to this fob style attachment. That's the brooch running across the back with the C receiving clip. A yellow enamel variety, probably for mental, is mooted, but I have not seen one. Go on. Okay, oh, sorry. A bit fuzzy anyway. One more, please. State bodies, the state bodies that oversaw nursing and issued badges, some named, some numbered, some with both. In Queensland, the state body was the Nurses Registration Board, established in 1912, which became the Nurses and Masseurs Registration Board a little later. These badges initially had no written designation on them, but used different colours to designate one purpose. The sky blue one surrounding the dark blue Maltese cross was for general, a red surround for midwifery, obviously signifying the blood of childbirth, a green surround for massage, the one on the bottom right, and a white surround for mental. Maybe we can go on to the next one. So this gives you an idea of what's on the back. In the top one, Flavel, FRNS, Flavel Robertson Sankey, Brisbane, in a stamp. Then the name, A.M. McDunn, and then the date, 1912. So this is in the first lot that were ever issued. Broken pin is typical of this type of badge. They seldom come in pristine condition unless a woman's gone through, become qualified, received her badge and virtually got married straight away, so she was deemed to have retired. She had to leave her work. So there's the 4 different backs of those 4 badges. Now, in the next slide, later the titles were added. So you can see at the top there, general, to the right, midwifery, bottom massage, and the other one yellow for child welfare. So the colour scheme was retained with the added classifications spelt out plainly spelt out. Almost all Queensland nurses' badges are enamelled on a brass planchet until in relatively recent decades an epoxy finish was applied. Maybe one of the back here. Stephen? Yeah, great. So there's the back of those badges, and you can see the different shapes of them. The name Bishop is for Wallace Bishops, usually spelt out in later years, but in the very early years was just Bishop, not Bishops, Brisbane. Australians have a great attraction to putting an S on the end of the Meyer becomes Myers and such like. There are a very small number of silver badges known, so these also are in silver, but it is not clear why these were issued in silver. It could be just that the nurse's family had more money and there was an option of getting a silver badge, but it could have been a prize, I'm not sure. Next one, please. I'm not sure why that one's there. Oh, this one's in sterling silver. Even though it looks a terrible condition, it's in a dark toned sterling silver marked by SIL. Again, a Queensland badge, and he's had a hard life. Next one. WA had a similar arrangement and issued named silver badges with the Nurses Registration Board, clearly spelled out, and then had added pendant qualifications, as you'll see in the piece on the right with midwifery. The later issues had the extra qualification incorporated into the badge when struck. So we can go on. So there's the 2 badges there, and you can see this one's issued in 1929, that one's dated in 1941, and even though it's issued in 1941, the number for the midwifery badge is only 10. So it looks as though there weren't too many midwives in Western Australia at that time. Newer badges show the nurses board and have a qualification below the swan. Next one, please. So here's an example here, whereas it's got, it's not below the swan, it's above the swan. Who wrote this? So
the newer one down below has it below.
Ah, that's it. That's exactly what I meant. If you can save me any later during the talk, that would be appreciated too,
We
Stephen.
got your back, baby.
So there's midwifery above there, nursing aid there, and the later style is the one that, as Stephen said, Sheridan is the main maker scene, but I have noted one badge by KG Luke, which is a Melbourne maker. Next, please. So there's the back of those. Again, all noted with the name, the number for the registration, and the maker, all by Sheridan, but there's the example I know of from Luke. Next, please. Tasmania had badges from its board for nurses and auxiliary nurses. This, I don't have an example of one with a pendant qualification, but that's clearly what the two loops are for on the bottom of that registered general badge, registered general nurse badge. Next, please. New South Wales named and dated silver badges come in two styles: a general badge with attached and pendant qualifications, and different badges for different qualifications. So this is an earlier style here, which when we have a look at the next slide, will show that there is a main badge, there is an attached qualification there soldered to that badge, and in addition to that, a third qualification. So this would be, I think the term is, a triple certificated nurse. Again, with a lot of information about the awardee, her name and the date, and there's her snapshot of some of her life. Victoria, well, here's the ones which have got their separate qualifications for separate badges for the separate qualifications. So you can imagine a nurse who had 3 qualifications would have been putting on 3 badges every day onto a crisp starched uniform. Next one, please. Again, here's the references on the back. A more modern style had references on the back, which would be to the qualification, but no dates. So a little bit of loss of information as time has gone on, but still, using things like Trove and that, it's possible to look up these people's names and get an idea of what era you're searching and possibly see them being awarded. Next, please. So here's our Victorian nurses. Victoria seems to have different badges for separate qualifications. So there's again a general nurse and an example of a psychiatric nurse. Next. Again, a lot of information on the back. Next. And here we come to South Australia. Similarly, South Australia has general, the top left, RM, which I believe to be registered midwife, RPN, which I believe to be registered psychiatric nurse, and RMN, so RMN, registered mental nurse, which I think is a later, or the 2 badges are not issued concurrently. I think it's just the same award, but different terminology. But that's my guess at this stage. Almost all badges seen from South Australia are by Schlank. Some named, some with numbers. The one on the bottom left, nothing. All right, we'll move on. Here's a later edition, Nurses Board South Australia. I think that's enrolled general nurse, and the other one I think is enrolled nurses aid. There's quite a variety in these. Next, please. Again, some have got names and details on them, some haven't. Next, please. Now, the Queensland Maternal and Child Welfare Department also issued badges of their own. There are 2 styles known to me. This is the latest style. These are the 2 styles that are known to me. Next, please. This one by Hanford would probably relate to the 30s. The other example, I'm not sure of the era. And just going back if you could. What the difference is between them, I'm not able to say. They could be just the same badge and a different era gone down in size is the general trend as time goes on. Next please. Now, an earlier silver badge made in Birmingham, so we can have a look at the next please. So this one's in hallmark, these are British hallmarks here, made for Rothwell's of Brisbane. And we'd all know Rothwell's from the time of became eventually a merchant bank, but it was a very large maker of Masonic jewellery, and this reflects some of that style. If you take it back, Stephen, you can see that this would have been a fob attached to somewhere, but what was dangling off this hook, I don't know. But the two examples I've got have both got hooks on them. This one dates to 1910-11 from the hallmark.
It's a nursing badge.
Well, I believe it to be a badge of the Queensland Maternal and Child Welfare that preceded the other ones, but I have no proof for that. It's quite a large badge, about that big, without the hook. Next, please. So, by far the largest proportion of badges are named to the hospital at which the nurse, nurse's aide, or auxiliary nurse served. It seems almost every hospital issued their own. Many are named, dated, and made of silver, with a lesser number seen in gold, with examples seen in 9 and 15 carat. This is St John's Hospital in Rockhampton. That's in sterling silver, quite a large piece, almost crown size. And the other one's from the small hospital at Clermont, which I think has got, the town has got a population of about 2,000 people today. Next, please. Oh, I thought we had something for the back there, but we haven't. I'll have a word to the author. But those 9 and 15 carat badges are often seen associated with Melbourne hospitals. There seems to be a trend in Victoria for them to be able to run to the cost of having these badges made in gold. And I presume that the gold ones were purchased because they're both in 9 carat and 15 carat, and it was just a matter of the person having the resources to purchase that badge as opposed to a silver base metal in 9 or 15 carat. Somewhat similar to the system that existed with some union badges. Not sure what that's up there. Anyway, badges were also issued by the School of Nursing attendant. These are just various hospitals. As you can see, Calvary Hospital. This is a particularly attractive one. The Bethesda Hospital, Melbourne, and the I'm not sure. I can't quickly remember what the WG Hospital was. Ngara or something. No, General Hospital anyway, and with an obstetric bar. Next, please. New South Wales. Again, these are issued in silver for a particular hospital. The Prince Alfred Hospital, clearly for obstetrics, a child in the swaddling clothes, I think they call that, and a Sydney Hospital with an image of the hospital there. All those two are in particular in silver. Next, please. And Mareeba Hospital is not in Mareeba, Queensland, but it's in a suburb of Adelaide. And the Calvary Hospital again is in Adelaide, a midwifery badge, and I believe that the LCM is the Little Children of Mary, which is an order of religious nuns. I hope I've got that correct, but clearly a religious symbol there. But the Mareeba one helpfully has a date of its award there in 1932, and if it's named on the back, there's a possibility you'd find the record of its being granted in the newspapers. Next, please. Oh, here's the nursing schools at long last.
Sure.
So Royal North Shore School of Nursing, A couple of these are available for a school, for a reunion in one particular year. Whether they had reunions every year or not, I don't know. But I've certainly got one for a reunion of nurses at the hospital. And this one from the College of Nursing. I'm not sure what the designation associate means. Next, please. Oh, here's the reunion one, Prince Alfred Hospital. And that's a Kalgoorlie, is it? Kalgoorlie?
Yeah.
Kalgoorlie
Kalgoorlie.
Nurses Association. You wouldn't think a place like Kalgoorlie would have its own Nurses Association, but there's the evidence to the contrary. It did have.
That's past
Past
nurses.
nurses.
Oh, past Nurses Association. Oh, well, there might be a few passed through the Kalgoorlie and they kept together through that association. Next, please. Now, here's some awards here for service at these places for a range of people who are not actually nursing staff, but providing all the ancillary facilities there, volunteers, sometimes described as helpers, sometimes collectors of fees, auxiliaries, often each naming a hospital, and even individual committee members at hospitals had badges that they could wear. Next, please. Here's the committee here on this side, and a Tasmanian one on the other side. Next. Like any profession, there are related certificates which clearly were of a handy size so that nurses could present them to prove their qualifications. Badges survive because they are small and, if in silver, of some value. Paperwork like this, much less so. So this is a little book about that big, not particularly large. Next, please. And when it opens up, this is what you find inside. So it names the lady, when she studied from, when it was awarded, and into it has been pasted an extra obstetric qualification. And you'll remember from the first early badges we saw at the start, the Australasian Trained Nurses Association, even the certificate matches the badge in red. Next, please. And here's one issued just for a local example from the Toowoomba Mothers Hospital with an image of the hospital. Presumably, when you showed that to another hospital that you've been transferred to or moved to, that would be a form of justification of the standard of education you've received as a nurse, because here's the standard of the building in which the hospital operates.
That's a 1.5 year, does it? Yeah. They've added up so much.
Could be, yes, for 1.5 year. Has personally, can't read it from here, I'm sorry, but they're the people who are signing it off and certifying to her qualifications. Next, please. Naturally, there were awards for nurses who excelled in gaining their qualifications, but these are not common. These include presentation nurses' buckles, which are a popular collectible even when they are not an award. This is quite a large silver medal, you could call it. It's larger than a crown in silver. Perhaps there's another shot at the back, I don't know, Stephen? No, there's not, so we go back. So in 1905, this may have been just a normal qualification badge from the Adelaide Children's Hospital, but I couldn't imagine that she'd be wearing this around a ward on this reasonably insubstantial ribbon and not losing it. So whether it's a presentation award or what, I don't know, but out of character with every other size badge. Next, please. And this is the St Vincent's Hospital type buckle. There's also a receiving part where it clipped in, not as ornate as the British style where they have two halves of the buckle that come together, and quite ornate and of a quite delicate feminine appearance, whereas this, to me, doesn't look too feminine. It's designed by men, I feel. Okay, next please. A related area is the non-hospital sector, especially baby and infant welfare, where badges were often issued to staff nurses who quite often visited the patient in their home. These included Mothercraft for the Plunket system and the Royal Society for the Welfare of Mothers and Babies, the Tresillian, which is the latest one in the bottom right, and the Royal Society, an earlier style, quite large badge, about the size of a crown, in the voided style, and then it became that smaller style, and then this solid one probably precedes the voided style. Next please. These are often named, well here they are, full names often, and a date. Great for doing research on, and usually made in the state in which the nurse was practicing. Next please. And here's the Mothercraft badges. They're referring to the Plunket system, or Plunket nurse, baby welfare, and that's the Queensland Mothers Association, Mothercraft Association. Next please. The upper right hand badge in enamel, it's in silver, which has MUDNA. Well, the DNA is not too hard to translate. District Nurse Association is a common terminology. MU proved to be a bit of a problem for my little brain until I got this little paper ticket. And by the time I got that, I found out that the two flags on there are a nautical term for render all the assistance you can. So if you're on a ship, you run this up. Now, you might say to me, Bernie, I'm surprised that a woman would design a badge like that. Well, you'd be 100% right, it wasn't designed by a woman. It was designed by a Church of England chaplain. And the MU therefore stands for the Mothers Union, which is an institution in the Anglican Church. The other badge on the left is a Presbyterian, I can't remember the name of it, but you can probably see it better than me. So there's even queries regarding the what the initials mean and challenges there. Next please. Right. The entirety of Australian military nursing, including VADs, their awards, medals, badges and extensive history, is a most interesting area, but far beyond the scope of this brief introduction. Now, apart from the usual numismatic attractions of design, quality of manufacture, use of enamel, the world of nursing badges has the great appeal that it is that if one is lucky enough to secure all the nurses' named badges, the owner's life story is spelt out. Qualifications gained, hospitals worked at, jurisdictions they were in, the states or countries, can all be revealed by the badges. Now these 5 badges are all to the same lady. So she served in Western Australia, she served in New South Wales, and the bottom one is a Victorian badge. Next please. So here's the names on the back to be able to link the story together. Next please. And if you tire of just collecting Australian nursing numismatics, there are similar collectibles awaiting you in overseas nursing badges, probably issued by almost every nation under heaven. So good luck with that. Thank you.
We have a minute for discussion or questions. Anybody like to? Perhaps I could start with Bernie. These pseudo mint marks,
Hallmarks.
silver hallmarks.
Yep.
Yes, I don't know about pseudo hallmarks.
Pseudo hallmarks were used in a lot of different countries that didn't have a proper hallmarking system. In America, Canada, they often did imitations of what the monarch's head looked like. They put in their own marks, not always imitating British hallmarks, often imitating German hallmarks. For some of the earlier jewellers were more familiar with Danish and German official marking standards. So that's where they've used this sort of thing here to cook it up to make it look like it's, they can say, oh, to the uninformed, oh, look how it's all hallmark there, it's good silver.
And was there a formal ledger kept of these hallmarks?
No.
They were just pseudos, were they?
They were made up by the jewellers themselves and almost completely unregulated until the Australian system came in the early 1920s. But it only lasted until World War II. And there they had quite a complicated system of markings depending on what state the jeweller was in. It incorporated the jeweller's initials and usually had a symbol that associated the main jewellers. Say a flag for Aronson, the makers in Melbourne, Wheatsheaf, a big W for Willis, this sort of thing. So it was a real hodgepodge of variables. But as I say, in Australia that only lasted for a short period of time. But they did incorporate a date letter very much akin to the British dating system, where every year it's progressed by one letter. But they didn't get too far into the alphabet.
Well, thank you, David. Well, thank you. Well, as David told us earlier, Rod Sell very graciously has prepared individual presentations for a medallion named individually for all the speakers. So on behalf of us all, it's a delight to present you with this, Bernie. It has on the obverse our badge, our logo. Everybody has to know the scientific name of the grass tree.
Xanthorrhoea.
10 out of 10.
Thanks to your Vincent Ring speakers from some years ago.
Yes, indeed, from Gary Bacon.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. What was the name that Cunningham gave to them, the Xanthorrhoea, when he first saw them?
Grass tree.
He called them beehives on sticks. So on behalf of us all, thank you for that wonderful presentation, that wonderful research that's gone into it.
Thanks,
Well, it's a pleasure to introduce our next speaker, our president, David Mead. David's a very young, senior, retired consultant electrical engineer. He polished off a higher doctorate at the University of London on control systems, and of course he's our president of our association. David and Judith, as we all know, have a second career in horticulture with managing and growing these wonderful plants, both from South Africa and from Australia. So it's wonderful to hear about that horticultural world, and we look forward in future years to numismatics of horticulture in various ways, as well as the wonderful presentations of gold coins that we've been privileged to see today. David just reminded me before coming today that he's Vice President of the Robertson Environmental Protection Society, David, and that's wonderful today that you and Judith are very much involved in environmental protection. But David also has an interest not in, as well as in numismatics, but in the broader concept of money and commerce. And it's in that field today that David's presentation is entitled Money Debasement Through the Ages.
Actually, no, may I just correct that?
Yes, you may indeed. Tell us.
I've got two talks coming, this one and the next one, and I made this one first, right? But this is, strictly speaking, the second in the sequence. But nevertheless, what we'll do is we'll stick to the program, and this one is called Whatever Happened to Gold. And as John just mentioned, This is not so much about numismatics, it's about money. I know you might think they're similar, but they're not. Numismatics is normally about describing what's on the coin, its history and so on, and, you know, the object itself. This is about how money is used and the people who control it. And that first slide here from the Scottish philosopher David Hume, see, we've been living without gold for, you know, 70, 80 years or so out of our system, and everyone's cocksure that what we've got is right. So I quote David Hume, to think that there might be some doubt about whether what we've got is the right thing. When men are most sure and arrogant, they are commonly most mistaken. So think about that in mind. Next one. Karl Marx. They're all about history. Keep people from their history and they are more easily controlled. You are the holders of history, right? You cannot study numismatics without a little bit of history. And that's what he's saying. He doesn't want people to know about history. He wants people to believe that everything that happened before the Russian Revolution was terrible, right? Or don't even know about it. That way, they can be managed on his system. Right, next one. Okay, so what happened? Where did gold go? Now, as you all know, President Trump, who's now been elected, God knows how, first thing he did when he got in office was sign all these executive orders, this, that and that, like behaving like a dictator, as he said he would. Day one, he was going to behave like a dictator. Well, a lot of people have drawn similarity between the time of Trump and the time when, what's his name, Roosevelt was elected in the, well, it was actually, the election took place in 1932, when President Hoover was the previous President of the United States, and he knew at this point that he had to do something, and it's the usual, you know, I don't know if you've heard this one before, often in terms of investing, the people say, don't just do something, sit there. Well, he felt he just had to do something and didn't want to sit there, so he signed an executive order, number 6102, which essentially banned the use of gold in the United States. Okay? 1933, when he was newly elected, in the first 100 days of his presidency, this happened. And people were forced to surrender all their gold to the US Treasury and Federal Bank, and they were given banknotes instead. Now, at this point, banknotes had circulated alongside gold coins, but you could go walk into a bank and certainly ask for gold instead of the coin, and they would give it to you. No longer, you're not allowed to hold gold. And there were some very heavy penalties. Next one. Here we are, here he is signing the executive order in 1933. Under the executive order of the President, on or before the 1st of May, all gold coin, gold bullion, gold certificates, all monetary gold, had to be surrendered to the Federal Reserve Bank, and criminal penalties for violation, $10,000 fine or 10 years imprisonment or both. So pretty draconian, and so against the idea of American liberty and freedom, right against it. How I don't understand to get away, but it was dire circumstances. That's next one. Okay, here's what we're talking about. People who owned these had to give them away and get paper instead. And these are lovely coins, and these are all in the little cabinet there. So let's start with the one on the right-hand side, the so-called Liberty Standing Double Eagle, $20 coin. 1908, so this was under the presidency of Teddy Roosevelt, and interestingly enough, there's a little detail of design which we'll come back to, but this was so-called also the St. Gordon's type. St. Gordon being the designer and the controller of the mint in Philadelphia, which is the main US mint. Yeah, right, give me that one, thank you. So that's the standing Liberty type there, as I said. No, wrong one?
Turn it round.
Oh, wrong one, yeah, of course. Yeah, that's that one there. That is about 1 ounce of gold. So not quite, just a shade under, but you would be given, had to take that in, and every one you had of those, they would give you a paper note with Andrew Jackson's picture on it, which is one that's still on the current $20. So that's the double eagle. This one here, the single eagle, or $10 coin. 1913 was the presidency of Woodrow Wilson, just before the First World War. Well, just before everybody else had the First World War. Americans didn't come into that till 1917. And this one here, the $5 coin, and this was under Taft, William Taft, 1909, just been elected. And he was, Teddy Roosevelt wasn't particularly religious. In this religion, in this inscription, "In God We Trust," not every president wanted it on his coinage. Taft was quite happy to have it, but after Taft, the $20 St Gordon's one, they had just under there the same legend, "In God We Trust." So there's some interesting variations. But by and large, anybody who had those was supposed to surrender them. Now clearly a lot of people didn't, because there's so many available these days, and they only sell for a good, I mean, it's just a reasonable condition, they just sell for their bullion value. However, good ones, and if you could buy this in the 1933 version, talking about a couple of million there, it becomes one of the rarest coins in America. But this was 1908.
Was the order rescinded, or is it still in effect? Was the order
Yes.
rescinded?
No.
1970s. It was,
Sort of. Well,
1970s, Americans were allowed to run gold.
Yes. Now, I must say, at the same time, virtually every country in the world did that. Australia had the same history. After this date, you couldn't get sovereigns. It was, yeah, everyone followed him. Next slide. Okay, I just wanted to remind you of this. Why did he do it? Well, does everybody know about Gresham's law? Who was Gresham? For a start, he was a Lord Mayor of London, banker and financial advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. Quite a rich and wealthy merchant. But he realised, and he just encapsulated what a lot of other people knew, he says, good money drives out bad. In other words, it's a bit like yourself today. Okay, you want to pay a bill, you've got notes in your pocket, I've got a credit card, I'll pay the credit card. It's not as good as money, okay? The person who's selling this stuff to you is taking a risk that he might not get the money. And so you make decisions like that. Well, these days, they, typically if it was bad money, they'd use that to pay first and put the good money in a drawer. And that's similar to what was happening in 1933. He was complaining everyone was hoarding gold and waiting for, it to get more and more valuable so it'd get more work out of the labourers for less cost, and he thought that was a bad thing. And this is, nothing was. I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying that's the total reason, but that could be one of the reasons why he did that. Next one. Okay, 1933 wasn't a particularly good year. Adolf Hitler, suddenly appointed by German President Hindenburg to be Chancellor of Germany, followed by the burning of the Reichstag and the suppression of democracy in Nazi Germany. The second point that wasn't particularly good, Joseph Stalin was starving the Ukrainian farmers, known as the Holodomor. This was right in the middle of that. The life expectancy of a person at that time was 7 in Ukraine. All the children were dying. And then the Japanese army, the Imperial Army, invaded Manchuria. This is a terrible period. And by the end of the 1933, both Germany and Japan had withdrawn their membership from the League of Nations. And on the top of that, it's the worldwide Great Depression. So, next one. Before and after. So just to give a little recap. 1928 was considered the start of the Great Depression, and in 1929 was a Wall Street crash. This was under Hoover. And in 1929, they prepared these 20% tariffs. Now Trump's all about tariffs, okay? He thinks it's great. The Smoot-Hawley tariffs, there was 20% tariff on everything that was imported in the USA. They were trying to protect American jobs. They don't say that's the cause of the Great Depression, but they do say that it reduced international trade worldwide by approximately 70%. It didn't do to anybody too much good. But if it's sounding familiar to the Trump system now, there's no accident. A lot of people have drawn attention to that. And this thing, there were a whole lot of lawsuits because a lot of people had contracts. I'll give you do this if you pay me, and the payment has to be in gold. All that was also banned. They couldn't get gold, so they had whole lawsuits were all about this. Anyway, so that's the That's the main point of that thing. But as soon as, of course, Roosevelt had got enough gold coin in Fort Knox, he changed the valuation. So he basically said, all right, no longer $20 or 20.1 or what it was an ounce, now $35 an ounce. So he revalued the gold, not so much because he needed valuable gold, but because he wanted to reduce the value of the dollar, so that, you know, change the currency value. And anyway, this system remained the money system in America from 1933 right through the World War II till the next monetary system. And towards the end of World War II, before it was finished, but I think it might have been a bit after D-Day, they were fighting the Germans. They had this a place, a conference centre called Bretton Woods, which is in New Hampshire in 1944, and all the world's sort of economic experts met there to decide what the new monetary system of the world was going to be post-war. Next.
David, would you just explain for my brain why raising the price of gold reduces the value of the paper money?
Okay. You just need more paper money for the same value of gold, same amount of gold really, and so $35
It depends on your point of view.
It's relative, see? It's all relative to the gold. If the gold's worth the same, then the US dollar's worth more. It's worth less if you need 35 of them instead of only 20 to get that same gold.
It depends on your point of view. You know, when he either raised the price of gold or he reduced the value of the US dollar. Same effect.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But in my mind, gold is the ultimate measure of value. Everything else is artificial. So, well, we'll see. That's a personal opinion. Next one. Just on this period, what is good money and what is bad money? Well, in the era of coins and made out of precious metals, as we've often seen, good money consisted of coins of the correct weight and purity, and bad money was anything less, which included clipped coins, worn coins, the base coins of less purity, and so on. So if you knew which was which, you would always spend the bad money first to keep the good money. And especially if it was a nice round one and a nice design, you put it in your drawer for collectors 600 years later. However, in the era of banknotes and credit, which is what we're more into now, completely in fact, the more risk there was that it might not be honoured to have a full value, the worse it is. So this little money triangle is often used, gold being right at the apex, that's the most valuable ultimate money. Below that, fiat money, that's currencies of national governments, that's less. They used to say, I promise to pay the bearer, £1, not anymore, they don't, not in banknotes. No promises whatsoever about the value of it. And below that, the bank deposits. I mean, there's always a chance bank will go bust and you won't get your money. And then below that, securities of all those coins. And so you pay in that order, pretty much, certainly with liquid money. Nobody pays in gold anymore. Right, next one. Okay. Interesting man, Mayer Amschel Rothschild, one of the founders of the Rothschild banking system, banking family. His view, and rightly, never mind who makes the laws. How about we have Parliament, make laws, you work out and spend it all. Just let me control the money supply. And that's all I care about. Let me issue and control the nation's money. I care not who writes the laws. And this is Mayer Amschel Rothschild. And he had the reputation, I was telling John earlier, of making a fortune around the Battle of Waterloo, because the people in London were very pessimistic they were going to lose to Napoleon, and he bought up a whole lot of cheap securities because he knew who won it. He had carrier pigeons to tell him. Nobody else knew that, and so it's almost a bit deceit, but that started off their family. The next one. Okay, famous banking guru, J.P. Morgan, was considered one of the greatest bankers ever in the world. Gold is money. Everything else is credit. Okay, next one. Okay, this is a dense slide, but we don't have to read everything. Just want to remind you how heavy gold is. If you take a little cubic centimetre, a little sort of transparent cube, if you imagine, fill it with water, that occupies the space of 1 millilitre and weighs 1 gram. That gives a measure of the specific gravity, 1. Now what about gold? Well, if for the same weight of gold, you would only fill that centimetre up to 1/2 a millimetre high, and that is the same weight as 1 gram. Today's price, that's worth about 160 Australian dollars, 1 gram of gold, not much. Anyway, very high specific. It's got some interesting chemical and properties. One I found is only one a stable isotope of gold. There are no other isotopes which are stable. You can make radioactive ones, but then they decay very rapidly back to the standard one. It's got atomic number of 79, which is 79 protons in the nucleus, and atomic mass of 197, which all the rest are neutrons. Not particularly reactive, that's why people like it, you know, that's why I call it a noble metal, because it doesn't really react much. It reacts with a few things, such as well. And the other thing is, gold is not used up. And you know, you use it, of course, and they use a lot in very high conductive connections in electrical work and stuff like that. It's always worth trying to recover it. In the medieval time, they used the only yellow colour they had to make the wonderful illuminated manuscripts was gold. They burnished leaf gold onto the paper. Later on, so many of those manuscripts were burnt trying to recover the gold in the days of the Reformation. And you do need to alloy it with other metal. It's too soft, just 24 karat gold, that's the ultimate purity, 0.999, whatever. It does need to be alloyed with something else to make it hard enough. Think of it as like you don't want a piece of wood with a nice smooth grain. You want a lot of little knots in it. That's what the alloy does to make it hard and more brittle and not wear so much. And note there, speaking about King Croesus, which everyone's doing, he was the one credited for bringing gold into the coinage as opposed to an alloy, which was what they found naturally in the river, electrons. So we started with bimetal currencies. But just a lot of people say, oh, you can't possibly have gold, there's not enough of it. Well, the interesting thing is, modern mining technology, which I was also discussing, has got so much out of the ground in recent years that the amount of money mined gold in the world per person, even though the population is multiplied usually, it's not as much as there was in 1900. So we're not running out of it. And Australia has the biggest reserves, known reserves in the world. So there's a huge worldwide trade in gold and its derivatives, second only to the US stocks in value. The price of gold tends to keep pace with inflation, sometimes more, sometimes less, this time's more. And also Australia is a big producer of gold, producing around 300 tonnes annually. That's a lot. Remember what I just said about the weight of gold? Just imagine 300 tonnes is 15 cubic metres. That is a cube, a metre, 15 of them, all piled in a row. Weight is huge weight, 300 tonnes in fact. That's what 300 Australia's annual production looks like. And that's only about a tenth of the world's production. They're still mining in Guinea and in Ghana now, and Russia and now China. China is still the biggest producer of gold in the world. And they're stacking it away like mad. Right, next one. Oh, I like this one. The gold standard makes the money's purchasing power independent of the changing ambitions and doctrines of political parties and pressure groups. Right? This is not a defect of the gold standard, it is its main excellence. Now, what I should tell you, Von Mises was a bit of a right-wing guy. He was an economist in so-called Austrian school, but I believe that's a pretty powerful statement. Next. Here's Alan Greenspan, one of the previous incumbents of the governor of the Reserve Bank in the USA. Gold still represents the ultimate form of payment in the world. Fiat money in extremis is accepted by nobody. Now, in extremis means we've just had a world war, right, or a nuclear war, and we're looking for someone to buy something. Nobody's going to accept US banknotes or Australian dollars, none of that. Just gold. It's always accepted.
The Uganda $100 million banknote.
That's
is
right.
The ultimate example.
Yes, well, that's right. We've had so many so many periods in countries, hyperinflation, most notably in 1923 Germany. Anyway, this is the Federal Reserve Bank. His job is to look after the paper US dollars, paper US dollar. And this is what he thinks about it. Next. Okay, there's another one from him. In the absence of the gold standard, there was no way to protect savings from confiscation through inflation. There is no safe store of value. Yeah, well, he's right. That's where we are at the moment. Next. This is a very important one. Have you ever heard of this one? This is Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, the first secretary of the Communist Party of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And he was a bit down on the people who wanted to continue on the old system, the bourgeoisie. That's the town people, the people who had a sort of middle class existence. They couldn't have any of that under the new world of communism. So he wrote, the way to crush the bourgeoisie is to grind them between the millstones of taxation and inflation. And we've all experienced that to some extent still. Next. Now, everyone heard of John Maynard Keynes, famous British, one of the most famous British economists out, because he lived through all of this period. He said, Lenin is said to have declared that the best way to destroy the capitalist system was to debauch the country. Now, debauch, what does that mean? I mean, it makes it bad, but debauch, in my view, consists of both the old type of debasement, when precious metals were money, by degrading it, by putting too much alloy and so on, and also in the current system, where it's already completely debauched to no value, but nevertheless, its value only is transient till the inflation just eats it away. That's debauchment in both things. And he was saying, certainly right, there's no subtler, more sure way of overturning the existing basis of society than to debauch the currency. The process engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction and does it in a manner which not one man in a million can diagnose. It's right, it's hidden. There we go, next one. Another one from Greenspan. Gold, unlike all other commodities, is a currency, and the major thrust in demand is not for jewellery. It's not for anything other than escape from what is perceived to be a fiat money system, paper monies, that seems to be deteriorating. So if you want an explanation of why gold is going through the roof in price at the moment, people are fearful, and that's why. Next. Okay, let's go back to the Bretton Woods system, made in 1944, sorry, and Keynes attended this and put his 2 bobs worth in part of the discussion, but it's an international monetary agreement that was standardised currency rates. First of all, they agreed that the US dollar would be the standard and that everything would be pegged to that. And that was still pegged at the old $35 an ounce from Roosevelt times, and but people couldn't, individuals could not buy gold, couldn't use that, gold was still banned, but countries could. So it was aimed to bring uniformity to exchange rates, so other nations pegged their currency rates to US dollars, fixed, and US itself was pegged to gold. Gold was allowed to be redeemed by participating countries $4 at the above rate. Gold was there to stabilise inflation. So the next question is, well, what could possibly be wrong with that? Along comes Charles de Gaulle. Remember Charles de Gaulle, President of France? This is Charles de Gaulle quote. There can be no other criteria, no other standard than gold. Yes, gold which never changes, which can be shaped into ingots, bars, coins, which has no nationality, and which is eternally and universally accepted as the unalterable fiduciary value, in French, par excellence. So there's Charlie de Gaulle. And what did he do? Well, he didn't really like the Americans. The Americans didn't come to the France's rescue in 1940, but he said they should have. He was grateful to them for coming in 1944, too late. But he, as president, didn't want any of NATO members on his soil, French soil. No, the French never had any American army. They all went to Germany and all of that, but nothing. He didn't particularly like them. And he said, no, you guys, all you need to do, if you want $100, just print one. If we want $100 to buy some oil or whatever, we've got to 400 goods that you want so that we can get that $100 from you. Nevertheless, they got some great stuff in France. America was quite keen to buy it, so they had a lot of dollars. He didn't want them, he wanted gold. So what did he do? He sent a warship over to New York Harbour to collect it. And at that time, President Nixon, who was in charge, reluctantly gave the French the gold for the US dollars. And at the same time he said, well, that's it, no more dollars, no more gold for anybody. We saw the reserves in Fort Knox go down when the French took theirs, and that was it. So next one. So that tells a little bit of the story. I won't go through all of that, but that's what I just said. And next one, they're called in 1971 the Nixon shock. Ever heard of that term? No? Okay. Next one. Well, there's a poor old man. He's remembered mainly for the Watergate scandal, but he has some lovely quotes. Next one. I never didn't do anything wrong, and I promise never to do it again. Of course, during this time was the time of the American, the movie and all of that. It's an interesting time. When the president does it, that means it's not illegal. But
It's got a very
That's what Trump's doing.
David, time is nearly up.
Okay, all right, we're almost done. So here we are. Just another one from Greenspan. I'll keep on doing it quickly now. So next one. I won't go into this. This is about the money trilemma. How there's only 2 degrees of freedom, really, not 3 degrees of freedom when it comes to managing money. And previous to the gold era, the exchange rates were virtually the same as the price of gold. They didn't have a list of exchange rates. You just weighed the currency. But in that intermediate period, they tried to do the whole 3, and it wasn't successful. That's one of the reasons why the end of the Nixon shock, end of the Bretton Woods system happened. And since then, they've freed gold. I don't know if you remember the Nixon one. His vice president, Spiro Agnew, he had to retire too because of something he'd done illegal. So Gerald Ford, who was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, he became president. And a few years later to this, he released gold that was when gold became viable again. Well, prior to that, people couldn't own it, it was illegal. So here we are, next one. Yeah, a couple of quotes here. Taxation, inflation is taxation without legislation, next one. Yeah, okay. All these are famous economists. The problem of having no value underlying the currency is what we're into right now. Okay, and Keynes again, by the continuing process of inflation, government can confiscate secretly and unobserved. You only got to look at the tax law to see how it's done. The bracket creeper is just a part of it. All of that. Next one. Okay, this was none yet. They're all against it. Hayek was another Austrian. Next. I like this one. The first one. Don't bother going through that one. The most important thing to remember is that inflation is not an act of God. Inflation is not a catastrophe of the elements or a disease that comes like the plague. It's a government policy. Okay, well, I'll ask my John, I'm running out of it, that's fair enough. Just this bit here. There's a whole theory to explain why the current money is good. Next one. Price of gold, next one. Yeah, this is pretty nice. I might stop here. Here we are, just the last one in Australia. I have a seen him in half sovereign in the mid-19th century. I have a tiny little $1 of US mid-half century. This was what the Australian dollar was based on, the half sovereign, right? 10 shillings, $1. Right? This is what the American dollar was based on, a much tinier piece of dollar. Now what do I imagine? Put your hand in front of this and take 60%, and that's what the Australian dollar is now. So the Americans have done a bit better than we have, but admittedly they're what the reserve currency. Anyway, we'll stop there.
Thank you very much. It's always been a very significant subject.
Yes.
We want to hear more about this on some future occasion.
Well, I'll recap a little bit because my next talk tomorrow is more about earlier history of this, about debasement in various countries, all the philosophers and wise men that spoke out against it.
Yes, indeed. Well, I know there are some questions and we are out of time,
That's
so
all right,
we
yeah.
will have to stop. But
Yeah, that's all right.
talking of value, Rod has manufactured this very unique coin with your name on it.
Right,
So it's unique.
right, nobody else would want to buy it.
No, and it's Gillen. On the obverse is a vice circlet of a fruiting laurel. So
Thank you very much.
from everybody here with
Yes,
our esteem
thank you
for a
very
wonderful
Look at Rod.
presentation.
There he
Thank
is
you.
taking a picture.
Smile. Thank you.
I should be doing what the Olympics, you know.
It's only plated. It's not solid, it's only plated. But it is gold plated.
Yes, yes, that's right.
David mentioned about the desirability of alloys for the striking of metals. He mentioned about the non-corrosivity and the rareness of metals. One of the other features is malleability, isn't it? Gold is the most malleable of all elements. As you said, told us it can be spread out to gold leaf.
Almost a molecule.
Whereas glass has zero malleability. In the malleability is the resistance to fracturing on pressure. So somewhere between that, zero for glass and the ultimate for gold is the ideal alloys for metals and coins. Thank you so
We're
much.
further behind.
Well, it's a great pleasure now to introduce Keven Duddy as our next speaker before afternoon tea. Keven, as we all know, is a very young veteran, both of the troubles in Ireland, where he exhibited great courage and very considerable personal threat all the time. And Keven is also a veteran of the Falklands War as well. So it's wonderful to have you, Keven, here with us today. We know of your role as a dancing instructor, a ballroom dancing instructor, and we've rejoiced recently in your appointment as an international adjudicator in ballroom dancing as well. We know you also as a person who has established a most wonderful base for veterans who are potentially suffering from PTSD in the classic car restoration, magnificent workshop you've established in Beerwah, in Queensland. So our esteem for all these sort of things. Many of us know you also as a numismatist and an authority on early habit coins. And it's about that you're going to tell us this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Right, I know we're on a time frame, so I'm going to race through this fairly quickly.
Take your time. We've got plenty of time.
I'll get put on a charge if I don't hurry up.
They only want their coffee, that's all.
I shall. And if I go over time, then too bad.
The chairman won't you allow you to go over time.
Well, I'm going to speak quickly then. Short cross pennies of Henry II, Richard I, John and Henry III, 1180 to 1247. This coinage, or this type of coinage, spanned 67 years and 4 monarchs. So, racing on. In 1154, when Henry II came to the throne, England had been in chaos from a 19-year civil war. For the first 4 years of Henry's reign, no new coinage was minted. And, no offence to you, Stephen, but Stephen's coinage was shocking. Leaving the country to manage on the poor quality, badly struck coinage of Stephen. There we go. In 1158, the first of a new coinage was struck bearing the name of Henry. This coinage became known as the Cross and Crosslet, or Tealby coinage, from the sizable hoard found at Tealby in Lincolnshire. Now that's another talk on its own, so next time. The new coinage was also poorly struck and on irregular flans, but it survived for 22 years before finally being replaced by the short cross coinage in 1180. So now here comes our short cross. With the exception of a very small number of round halfpennies and farthings, and to be honest, I've never seen one, but I'm sure they exist, the short cross coinage of 1180 to 47 consists only of pennies. They were struck in good quality silver and a standard weight of about 22 grains, 1.43 grams, and a diameter of about 18 to 20 millimetres. Throughout the 67 years of their issue, no substantive changes were made to either the obverse or the reverse design. Much discussion had been had on the identification of the coins and the attribution to which kings. The result was chiefly attained by Sir John Evans in a paper published in 1865, blah blah blah, but it's an ongoing argument and more research needs to be done on it. Please. Oh, that looks a lot better than what I'm looking at here. Right, the new coinage is remarkable in the fact that it spans, of course, the 4 monarchs. But as you can see, the class 4 of Richard I, we've got John down the bottom, and they look like Henry III, Canterbury. The obverse type, crown buster for kings facing within inner circle, holding a sceptre in one hand. The obverse legend, Latin, form of the king's name, a title Henricus Rex, so it didn't matter whether it was Henry, Richard or John, they still had Henricus on them. The reverse, short voided cross with quatrefoil pellets in each angle, all within the inner circle, and the legend, the name of the moneyer and the mint, usually abbreviated because there wasn't that much space on them, between which the word on. So they didn't change in their 67 years. So then we ask, please Stephen, how do we separate them? How do we identify these things and turn them into which king they've got to belong to? Well, the research has happened long before my time, thankfully. So all I have to do now is identify them when they turn up on my doorstep and work out where they go. But as you can see from here, I'm not going to read all that, you can read it as you go, but you can see Henry II, only class 1 were minted in Henry II, but you can also see there's various subclasses and variable subclasses within that. Richard, only class 2 and class 3 within Richard's time, and most of class 4 until we get to 4C, where the very last of 4C went into John, and then all of 5, most of 6 went into John, and then the tail end of the 6, in fact the more ornate coins, went into Henry III, and then class 7 and class 8. Please, Stephen. Now, I'm not going to try and educate everybody on how to identify these coins because we don't have 6 months. But, quick identification, class 1.
Use that one.
I brought 2 of them for redundancy, and then I couldn't find them. How's that? Okay, so we look over here, we have a square type E. This is our class 1A. When we go to class 1B, you can see the square E here, go to class 1B, now we've gone to a round E, and that continues for the rest of the period. Class 1C is a deterioration of the class 1B. Please, Stephen. Class 2. Class 2 are all of Richard. Now, class 2 has, for the most case, been identified having 5 pellets to the crown, same as class 1. But the odd one sneaks in that has 7 pellets to the crown. So this one has 7. It's the only one I've got that's class 2 with 7 pellets. A few other little redeeming features, and we have a wiry beard down the bottom and an N with serifs. Can you zoom in on that N over there, Stephen?
See what I can do.
If you can.
That's the best I can do.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we see a nice little N. We've got the serifs, top and bottom, and we have the crossbar. So, moving on please, Stephen. That's our class 2. Right, class 3. Now class 3 is only of Richard. So So looking here, we've got 7 pellets to the crown, almost guaranteed, with class 3. And there we have our 7 pellets. I'm trying to hold this thing steady as I can. 7 pellets to the crown, and we have an even amount of curls. You can't see it on that side, but here we can see we have approximately 3 or so curls per side to the hair. That tells us pretty much that we have a class 3 on our hands. Now these two are both William and Rickard of London, so nothing fancy there. Please, again, Stephen. Class 4. Now if I wave this thing around and get it in someone's eyes, I apologise in advance. Class 4, predominantly Richard. We have multiple curls down the side to the hair and pellets for beard instead of little notches. And we can see we've still got 7 pellets across for the crown. Until we get to class 4C, and then the rules change a little bit. Now class 4C, are you able to zoom in on this, Stephen, sorry?
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. So we are now looking at a barred A. So there's our A with our bar across the top. So we have a very distinguishable A, and we have a reversed S. So you can see the S here is reversed. So that tells us we've now got a class 4C. Class 4C tends to fall in within John, so it's John's first coinage. So the rest of this coin, pretty much on the obverse, looks the same as Richard, except it drops down to 5 pellets, and it has a barred A and a reversed S. Right, next please. Class 5. Arguably the most dominant of the class, although it has been suggested that class 7 is the most common. I haven't found that. I found class 5 to be so. Okay, so here we have a class 5 with 7 pellets to the crown. Unheard of. I can't find any books that suggest 7 pellets to the crown. However, it obviously has happened because here is one. And we can see them down the bottom there. A typical class 5B, which is one of the most common of all the classes, I believe. Quite a nice, pretty coin compared to Richard's. Has certainly been tidied up and made. You can see that the bust actually resembles something of a person rather than the earlier ones, which are just shocking. And then we have some of the rare moneys. We've got mints as well. We've got King's Lynn, not a very common mint at all. And Rochester, also not common mint, but Alessandra, who only minted in Rochester. So those are 2 fairly rare pieces because of the money and the mint. Please, Stephen. Class 6. Now class 6 becomes very, very interesting. We have a letter X made of 2 thin strokes. Are you able to zip up on that?
I'll see what I can do.
Just see what you can do. Lovely, look at that. Okay, so class 6 we've got 2 thin strokes. And as in class 5, we have, in some cases of class 6A only, a pellet below the chin. Right, zoom out again, thank you, Stephen. Class 6B, a nice rounded face where we can see and we have hair strokes for whiskers, beard spread radially, and there's no pellet below the chin. And then we go to a really interesting set, which is the 6C ornate. Now 6C can be ornate or not, but 6C2 is an ornate type of coin. If you're able to zoom in on that for a second, Stephen. these are lovely pieces. We've got a nice little ornate R. We have an ornate E and an ornate C. A little pellet in the centre. So there's our C, a couple of little curls and a few little pellets, and the E, of course, much like the C, but has a centre stroke and the two wee pellets. So that's what gives us our ornate coins. Please, Stephen.
Next screen.
Next, if you can. Crack it on to make sure I don't get yelled at. Class 7. Right, here we have a Piers on Durham. This piece is featured in the British Numismatic Journal. Durham coins were smaller and fatter and exceptionally round. Because most of these coins are not exactly round, but the Durham pieces were a lovely little piece. Now, if we look at the hair, we've got a nice little set of curls going down the side. So, they say that these are the most common. As I said, I haven't found so. Coins are divided into three main subclasses, etc. But they deteriorate quickly. So you can see with our class 7B, we've got a William on Canterbury here. We've got a Bard A, oh there it is. Can we zoom in on that, Stephen?
Over here.
Right. So, I know it looks like a square E, but it's not actually a square E. We have one bar, second stroke, and the bar through the centre. So the A looks like an H. There it is here, just spread away a little bit. So that tends to define our 7Bs, our later 7Bs. Please, Stephen. Okay, class 8. Now, our class 8 is broken into 8A, B and C and various subclasses thereof. But the easiest way to define our class 8, we have our hair with pellets. A little pellet in each one. And A, B and C has a different type of X. So we've got a Carule style X. Are you able to zoom in on this one for a second, Stephen? Lovely, there we go. Beautiful. So we can see that we have this lovely little Carule for an X. Only the class 8A has that. And then moving across to our next one, are you able to slide across? Oh yeah, beautiful, look at that. Okay, so now we have a cross pate for our X. And then if we go across to our last one, Stephen, if you can, and a cross pomme for our X, which gives us our class 8C. And that's what separates all our class 8s. And you can see a little pellet in the hair. Can't see that one. There we go. Pick on any one of them, Stephen. This one down here will be fine. Just quickly. Right, a little pellet shoved in there. So that defines that. Now, that's all our classes. If we could just pop across to the next one.
Next slide.
So here's an interesting little, I won't call it a test, but a question. This is an argument, a rather odd find. The piece below shows qualities of classes 5, 6, 7 and 8. The letter R obverse shows consistency with class 5B and the pellet on the chin also, but the reverse R is ornate as class 6C2, as well as an ornate E. The hair curls consistent of class 6C3. The letter A is consistent of class 7A, as is no pellets in the hair, just free presence. And the X as cross pomme as 8C. No pellets either side of on. Let me find this, Ivan. There we go. So there's no pallet on either side of on. What am I up to? After extensive research, I've placed this in Class 6C, but unsure as to Class 6C2 or 6C3. Most interesting of all, the moneyer Ivan is only noted under Class 6C and 7B, but he's not noted under Class 6C ornate. So that leaves this piece to be a bit of an anomaly. And I am open to any discussion from the floor as to what people think it might be.
Counterfeit from Birmingham?
I was thinking, could it be a continental?
Another mint, yes.
One might think so.
To me, the sort of mixture of all sorts of odd classes that you can't find anywhere else in
Could
England,
be.
it implies it's not from England.
But an argument to that is everything that is from the continent tends to have an issue with the lettering. It doesn't make sense as far as it's just gobbledygook. Whereas this actually reads correct as it should do. I'll put that back down again. So we've got, share your spot here. We've got an I, B, N. We can see the bar on the end. On, C-A-N-T-E-R-D, Cantered, Canterbury. So there is no misunderstanding on who the moneyer is and what the mint is. If it was a continental imitation, there's almost a guaranteed chance that there is going to be a screw up somewhere around here. And the other thing is there's not too many continental imitations of the short cross. There's very, very few indeed. Most of your imitations are going to be of Edward I, so they're not short cross imitations. I'm not even sure that they made imitations back as far as John. And whether this is a John or a very early Henry, it's hard to say. We've got this pallet here which suggests it's either a 5B, 5C, 6A. So that is another throwback. No pallets through here. A nice little ornate E through here. An ornate R. Now, no, the ornate R is on the reverse. There we go. Here's our ornate R. So we've got two pieces of ornate lettering. We've got a cross pomme that suggests an 8C. It's a confusing little item. But
Any chance that Ivan is reasonably rare is because he made this and then he got the sack?
there's another argument that I hadn't thought of.
I don't think anyone at the time really cared about whether they were pellets or pearls or anything like that. It was just artistic, personal opinion as to
But
what
maybe he
one
didn't get the
does.
memo. And he just threw in whatever the hell he wanted. Well, I mean, memos took a long time to get up to Canterbury. So, hard to say what's happened on that one, but I just thought I would end on that happy note because this is very typical of what happens in the world of hammered coinage. You can think you know absolutely everything about a subject or about a period, and then something like this pops along and it just blows you out of the water. All you're thinking, down the tube, start again.
Welcome to science.
It's a unique coin, isn't it, Keven?
Well, I've never seen another one like it. I've got a few other Ivan coins from Canterbury, but some are earlier, some are later, but they don't look like that.
What was the life of the die?
Approximately, depends, obverse and reverse were different. The reverse, you could get up to 2,000 strikes out of it. Obverse about 1,000 strikes, because the obverse was the one that was hit by the hammer. The reverse was in the block.
Yeah.
Obverse took the wax. So usually they cracked and they were gone within 1,000. They didn't tend to melt any down, so even when they buggered them up, I mean, error coins were rife in this period. I've got some of these short cross would have flipped over while the striking's happened. So first strike, flips over, second strike, and some of them have been, by some law of nature, landed perfectly on top of the die and got an absolute perfect strike both sides. And then others, of course, have shifted off, and you've got a good strike of each side and then a half a strike of the other side where it's shifted. And then I've got a few where, Jesus, they've just about missed the thing altogether. They've got one side, and I don't know what the guy was thinking when he was giving it a whack, but he's, oh, look at that, we've only got about a quarter of it, but that'll do, that's grand. They didn't really give too much of a damn. But if they went to the point of changing each class as it went on, why didn't they change the guy's name? Why didn't they go to Richard and go to John? They had the ability to change it. Jesus, they're starting with fresh dice.
Do we know what these kings thought of their name not being on their own coins?
I haven't asked them, but I will when I see them. I don't know the answer to that.
Another question, the pellets on the reverse round the crosses, are they always sort of joined like dumbbells?
Yeah.
Pretty much. You want to go back a few slides if you can, Steve? Go back to 1, actually, class 1. Beautiful. Okay. Right, we don't have a reverse on it. But there's a whole stack of them down in the cabinet down there, so we can take a look later. Go to class 2.
In the lighting we've got here.
Okay. Yeah, they're pretty much dumbbells as well. I can't think of any that aren't, but
Yeah.
you've asked a good question. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yes.
dumbbell. Yeah, so they're pretty much kept the same, which tends to suggest that that wouldn't have been a tool that made a dumbbell. That would have been a tool that made a pellet and a tool that made a line, and they've obviously kept within that the whole time. However, there has been some changes to the inner circles.
Yeah.
Some have been almost like a solid round. Now, they were still made from pellets, but they were so close that it looked like a solid inner circle. Go to the next one, Stephen, see if we can find one that looks pelleted. Oh, there we go. So there we can see that the pellets. But here, we can see it looks like a solid round. In fact, that one and that one, that's the reverse of that fellow there. So he's just made that with pellets, just very close together. And this one here, he's kept the pellets further apart. Hop on to the next one, Stephen, if you can, we've got time.
Can I ask a question that's a bit more basic?
Absolutely.
How do you attribute the class to the king? I can see the different classes, but how do you say which class is which king? What's the name of the money?
Yes, and the Midtown. There's a whole lot of reasons why we can do it.
A lot of it also comes down to archaeology in terms of, here's a set that it only goes up to class 4, but what was gotten buried when they were making class 4s. Here's the set that goes all the way up to class 7, so that one must be a later hoard.
And our pipe rolls can give us a lot of information on that as well. The pipe rolls can say that this particular moneyer in Carlisle, for example, got paid out X amount of dollars for making something. And
What is a pipe roll?
pipe rolls the information from the Exchequer where he noted all the money that went out.
Surviving historical written records.
Yeah, it's like it's like,
If I could add to
like the Saxon Scrolls. It
if
just
I could
gives
add
us all
all
this
the
information.
monies were known and they've tied to bishops. And
Whatever they were
churches
paying out,
and-
it was all written in these pipe rolls, and many of them still exist. So we've got some great information. I've got copies of a huge amount of pipe rolls going from about 1140 through to 1400, which are the interesting ones. I know you want me to go.
Well, thank you, Kevin. What a wonderful corpus of research. We're overwhelmed, really, with the detailed research. We can see that it's ongoing as a lifetime effort. And thank you so much.
My wife and everyone after me.
You'll be pleased to know, talking about exactitudes of these very fine points, all cast in intaglio by the Monio. Rod, you'll be pleased to know, has spelt your name correctly.
Oh, you're the man.
So on behalf of us all, a token, a precious, unique token,
Indeed.
in fact, as a token of our esteem.
Smile for the camera.
What's up? You taking it yet?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Have you got some of these?
I'm struck by Rod
Thank you.
on
Well, colleagues, we thank our wonderful speakers who've given, really, they could have gone on for a couple of hours with the substance of their papers. We thank them for their discipline. And that, it's time now for afternoon tea, and we'll meet again strictly at 3:30 p.m. to continue.